Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this is something you'd be interested in, then why not subscribe? Today with a bit of a different deck profile. This is what I feel like I say a lot of the time actually, but this is a bit of a mix of three different archetypes really. And usually I try to either stick to one pure archetype or make up some crazy mix that really works together. And this one is, well, both and neither, because this is technically the archetype Earth Machine, and there's plenty of that. And technically it's also three different archetypes, and it is a bit of a mishmash, but the game plan is kind of the same as my Ancient Gear deck, but with fundamental differences. Before I even talk this deck down or up, we will just go by card and see what can this deck do, what do you try to achieve with this deck, what is this good for, what is it bad for, and yes, look at some replays of the deck in action. We have triple Infinitrack Harvester, and the Infinitracks are the main engine in this deck, mainly because it draws you two. You can search some Earth Machine monsters from your deck, so that can be nice. And yes, very, very resource gainy and very loopy, so you can do this multiple times in a row if you really want to. So there is that one. We run a triple Harvester because Harvester can search you into your most important card, which is Brutal Dozer. Obviously any of the other ones as well, but that's what it's mainly here for. Plus, this card has one other interesting effect that some of the other lower level Infinitracks have, that you can target one other machine monster you control. The levels of both that monster and this card become the combined original levels of those two monsters. So if you have this card on board with a level 10, let's say, you could make a level 12 Xyz monster, and with this one we can make number 77, the 7 Sins, which is hilarious if you hard make this card, and technically you could also make a Zeus hard make it. Very interesting. Not sure you really want to be doing this, but technically you could. So there is that if you want to be running it. Now let's get to the more interesting well, engine in here, which is the Ancient Gears, and that is mainly because I like Ancient Gears and I always wanted to find a home for them where the playstyle isn't just so focused around them, but where you can be doing some Ancient Gear stuff. And this deck felt like this is the one, because you usually, if you go through the Infinitrack combo line, usually search one Ancient Gear box anyway. And with the addition of Ancient Gear Ballista being in the deck regardless, you can splash in 2 or 3 more cards, and then you have an Ancient Gear playstyle that works fairly well. I'll be talking about that as well. So we talk about the Ancient Gear cards now in total. I decided to run one Ancient Gear Hunting Hound because if this card is normal summoned, inflict damage can be helpful, who knows, but also this is your fusion card as well. So this can be nice if it's special summon from the deck, if it's a special summon from your hand by the effects of, for example, a Anchor Drill, and you have any other Ancient Gear monster, you can always go into Howitzer, or you can go into the other ones, well, mainly into this one because this one floats into this though. Then you can use this card to do some more shenanigans with. So I felt like this is not too bad, because if you have 3 Ancient Gears, which isn't too hard if you have this card on board, if you have your Ballista and one more card in hand, which should happen from time to time at least, because the engine has some cards that get you your stuff back to your hand, so that's pretty nice. So I felt like one card that if you revive it from the graveyard, or if you just have it for some reason, it can always fusion summoning you into at least Howitzer, and Howitzer is annoying to deal with because it floats, and then it floats into annoying stuff. And yeah, I felt like that was quite nice, because this card is Destroy with Battle. You can special summon one Ancient Gear monster from your deck. The problem with this is obviously you need Ancient Gear monsters in your deck, so we have to run a lineup that isn't completely minimal for that to make sense. I decided not to include one Golem because I didn't really know what to do with it, but if you want to, you can cut some cards in here. Like if you want to, you can cut one of the Crusher runs, or if you feel like your deck is consistent enough, might cut one of the Machina Metalcrunchers if you really want to, and so on and so on and so on. So you could be running one Gear Golem as well if you want to. Ancient Gearbox is the important card because usually you search it with Ballista, and then you use this effect to search either one of those Infinitracks. I think Tunneller is the one that you usually search because that has 500 defense, so you can go into that and then go on with your Infinitrack combos and recycle your Ballista to the extra deck, so that can be quite nice, while then you have an Ancient Gear monster in your hand that you don't do anything with. Wink wink. Yeah, you can use this then at one point to fusion summon if you among the next turns get into this whole combo then, or draw one of the fusion spells and so on, then you could do that. Or you could, what you can also do with Ballista is Add, if you go second, the field spell to your hand that we run at 1. Then pop the field spell with the effect. If your opponent controls a monster, reduces attack and defense to 0. And then you can obviously pop this one, and this one then special summons you Ancient Gear Wyvern. And Ancient Gear Wyvern then goes into Ancient Gear Fusion, and then you already have 2 Ancient Gears in on your field, so you could go into Howitzer as well, or if you have a third one in your hand or on your board, then you could go into Megaton Golem as well. So that's like one of the things that you could be doing. Ancient Gear Wyvern also very intriguing to search Ancient Gear Reborn, because you can get the fusion back with it, which is very, very interesting. And since this is quite a grindy deck, it's not always too bad to have one of this in here, because you can fairly easily go into your Ancient Gear engine, and then this card can constantly pump out some nonsense with, if you constantly get Wyvern back, Wyvern can constantly search your stuff during your opponent's turn, and it doesn't only search your spell traps, but it searches your Ancient Gear cards. And you have lots of different ways of shuffling your monsters back into your deck, so you can keep adding gear box to your hand and then add other stuff back to your hand, and so on and so on. So technically that's possible, but theoretically, if you only want to go for the fusion package, you can cut Ancient Gear Reborn, because this card can be quite dead in your hand and isn't super useful, although this plus stuff like Crusher Run is hilarious to play if you get this set up, which isn't too easy, because this card's effect, for some reason, back in the day this might be balanced, but nowadays I don't think this should have been necessary for this card. You cannot set cards for the rest of this turn when you activate this card's effect. Very, very annoying, because if that wasn't the case, then you could easily have access to this one. But I guess when Wyvern came out, the combo of these two together might have been a bit too strong. I don't know if it would have been, but these days definitely wouldn't have. So sad, but true. And so usually if you use this effect during your opponent's turn for some reason, if they pop Geartown, or if you get into Ancient Gear Wyvern for some other reason, by floating from Howitzer, for example, then technically that makes more sense to search it then, because then you don't care about the whole can set to the end of the turn. We have Ancient Gear Frame, because this card is in your, if you ever need a discard, and sometimes you might need one, if you have things like a Citadel in your hand, then you can search Ancient Gear Fusion with it. It's a level 4 monster, it's an Earth Machine monster, so not all that bad. The effect is meh, but you know how it is with the Ancient Gear cards. One Anchor Drill can be searched off of Gearbox, and in general not too bad to go into certain extra deck monsters. Technically you can go to rank 9s in combination with the level 5s, but I didn't include any rank 9s in here because the good ones usually are a bit more expensive, but you can obviously design the extra deck whatever way you want to. A Trencher can summon you some stuff back and can go into your Link 2 place with it. Tunneller to keep getting resources, and with keep I mean usually I'd play 2 to 3 of this, but since we play triple Machina Overdrive, we can actually get this card even from the Banish Zone back into our deck and keep using it. The only problem is we cannot search this, so if you feel like you don't have enough of Tunnelers in your deck, then you could theoretically try to play 2 and cut some of the other cards. Triple Brutal Dozer, because this card stars your plays and can be quite nice if you go into any kind of normal summon that you have and your opponent then shuts that down, and then you're like, haha, but I have Brutal Dozer in my hand, and swoop, you continue your plays. So that's something to keep in mind. One Therion King Regulus, because this card is very easy to search. It plays around the bureau with your Infinitrack combo, so that can be nice. And also you can consistently loop this card with things like Super Express Bullet Train. So yes, very, very nice card. Anyway, we have 2 Machina, whatever it is, Metalcrunchers in here, because this can search your Brutal Dozer and search you anything else. It can search your Extenders as well if you go for any of them. That can be nice. And in general, this is also in here because we need some of them to be summoned off of Overdrive, because if we already have a Citadel engraved, then you kind of want another one in your deck, and this one is one of the good ones because it gains you some extra advantage. You can technically use the one that if you special summon it, then you can special summon one Machina monster from your graveyard, but this isn't an Earth Machine, so I felt like it sometimes became a bit problematic. So yeah, I decided to go for those 2. We have 2 Heavy Freight Train Derricrane here. You can technically go for 3, but I felt like 2 kind of hit the sweet spot because you do need a lot of extenders on your board just to go into sort of link monsters, and level 10 monsters aren't bad at that as well. Plus you do run 1 rank 10, so you can actually use it, and you can use it to go into a rank 12, so that's hilarious. But I felt like this one was a tiny bit better because you keep recurring it, and 5 for me was a bit of the sweet spot, but obviously you can decide whatever you want to be doing. If you play Urgent Schedule, then the whole thing also becomes a tiny bit different. Super Express Bullet Train also can special summon this card from your hand, so you have an extender in your hand if you special summon this, and also during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent this turn, you can target one machine monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can use this effect very, very often if you have a double-headed Anger Knuckle, and you will, so that makes a lot of sense. Citadel, the Torrential Tribute on legs. Well, technically Raigeki on legs more so, because if you pop it, you can destroy any monster that your opponent has with 3000 or less attack, and technically you can also pop any other card. So for example, the card that you summon back with a double-headed Anger Knuckle, and then just pop the Bullet Train, also 3000 attack, so you can still pop basically every monster your opponent has. And you also get this card in the graveyard again, so that can be quite nice. And this card summons itself back from the graveyard every time a face-up Earth Machine monster is destroyed by battle or card effect. So there is this. So I feel like this card, very, very strong effect and very nice, and it's the main reason why we do run Machina Overdrive, because this one summons it from deck, and then you have a Raigeki that you can use at will during your opponent's turn. Not too bad. Obviously this card can be ashed, so bit problematic. We have one Ancient Gear Fusion in here just because it's searchable. We have Geartown in here because it's searchable, and we want to run Ancient Gear. So you can cut the whole Ancient Gear package and just fill it with more of the Earth Machine good stuff that I'll be talking about in a second. But yeah, wanted to mention that anyway. We have Heavy Forward in here just to search your combo pieces again, and since this is not a normal summonable monster, we use this very well as an extender or as an Ash Blossom bait from time to time, so that is nice. Torrential Tribute, because it's a very grindy deck, and it can be neat that your opponent doesn't really know what to do from time to time. So if you nuke their board, you don't have that hard of a time to build it back up, because you don't build an amazing board, but you can do it consistently, and Torrential Tribute might get your opponent out of resources. Obviously not against the good meta decks, but that's why they're meta decks, and this one is not. We have Lost Wind, because also good for grindy decks, and also good because it lowers attack stats, because sometimes you might have an issue getting over certain monsters. We have Overdrive. Not only does it summon you Citadel and triggers technically the pop effect, so if you already have Citadel and Grave, this isn't bad either. It also has an effect where it draws you one card, and you can target 3 of your machine monsters that are banished and or in your graveyard and shuffle them into your deck, so you can recycle your Infinitrack stuff as well. Well, you talked about Ancient Gear Reborn. Very nice card if you can get the loop off. If not, it's a bit iffy, so yeah, you can cut this if you want to, but I do like it. I do like the interaction with Crusher Run, because Crusher Run, if a face-up Earth Machine monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target one card on the field, not even face down, face up, anything, destroy it. So very, very nice, because yes, it's a hard once per turn, but the issue is you can, not issue, the good thing is you can use it during your turn as well. And then if your opponent doesn't deal with this, you can consistently during each of the 2 turns pop 1 card, and that is how you get rid of certain back rows, that is how you get rid of certain floodgates, that is how you get rid of lots of different things and put your opponent under pressure. So I really like Crusher Run, but I don't want to run it at 3, because if you draw 2 of it, it's absolutely useless, and there's better cards that you can be running. So very nice, requires some setup, but the setup in an Earth Machine deck isn't too big. So yes, it's a bit reactive though. You can force it from time to time with the Overdrive or with Citadel, so not very bad, but it obviously could be a tiny bit better. So I feel like 2 is fine, but if it comes up, it shows like it is really good in my opinion, but if it doesn't come up, then yeah, not the best. Cards you could be running instead of the Ancient Gear engine would be the, well, Machina engine in here, because we're Fortress, very, very important cards. Pair it with Redeployment, very important, because this one can search you lots of different things, gives you discards, and also is somewhat Ash Blossom bait. So a very, very neat card. You can run Ruin Force at 1 or 2 if you want to. It's not a bad card at all. And well, they're all like dark monsters, so I don't really love them in an Earth Machine deck, because you get locked from time to time. So there's that, but you could be doing that as well. Then for the trap cards, you have Dimensional Barrier. If you want to stall the game for a whole turn, then this card can be very helpful, or Evenly Matched, a card that also comes in handy, especially in this specific deck, because after your opponent's battle phase, you might not have a board anymore, but then so won't they after Evenly Matched. And obviously Called by the Grave, because things like Maxi, very, very annoying for this specific variant, or any Infinitrack deck for that matter. The extra deck, 1 Howitzer, because we can shuffle them back into the extra deck effects of Tunneller or of the effect of Overdrive, so not too bad if we only have one. Not sure if you can shuffle this back because of the whole unaffected by other cards effects. You could run 2 if you want to, if it doesn't work. Never came up for me yet. I never wanted to summon 2 or wanted to shuffle it back, so I'm not sure if you actually can, but you could shuffle either of those 2 back, so that's quite nice if you wanted to go into that later down the line. If you feel like you need one more Howitzer, put it in. The extra deck space is tight, but not that tight, especially not in a budget variant. This you can summon, but it summons itself off this one if this one leaves the field by your opponent's card effect. So yeah, that can come up, but only this fusion summon card. So if you summon it back with Gear Reborn, then it's just a 3500 attack point beater. And yeah, don't have to run this one if you want to keep it cheap, but it's nice because it floats, and then this one could technically float again if you did play the whole Ancient Gear Golem shenanigans, but usually you wouldn't have. Heavy Armor Train, because not only can this card attack directly, it can make your other machine type monster attack directly. So 3300 attack points directly, and your opponent cannot activate spell traps until the end of damage step. Can be nice from time to time. We have River Stormer in here because this card searches everything. Mainly want to be searching King Regulus or one of the extenders here, but it can also send Citadel to the graveyard. So if you already have this one, then you can send this to the grave and you would still be fine. We have one rank 70 here just because the Infinitrack, you can obviously go for any other one. We have this one in here, can go for any other rank 8, but it is a Earth Machine monster, so we have that. And we can go into this with the effects of Anchor Drill and one of the level 4 Earth monsters, for example, so that is technically worth it. And this makes you have a 4000 attack point monster, so can be helpful from time to time. Sometimes you need this to attack over certain things. A Super Dreadnought, Super Dora card in here because we have lots of different, well, materials for it. We have the Freight Train that if you can detach it, it becomes a disruption. It can be very stally for you, so that's not too bad. And it's not too hard to go into. You can technically even make it with Citadel as well, so there is that. Should be a decent card to have in here, but you can leave it out at the start, but then the whole Derricrane only is link material and gives you not much of a different chance of going into certain other cards, because obviously if you start with these 2, then you already have a well, monster that's very hard to get rid of and 1 pop during your opponent's turn, so there is that as well. Already talked about this one. Very nice card if you go in second or in the grind game to get rid of your opponent's board. If you for some reason draw into this card and this, which isn't too hard because you can recycle this from the graveyard and you run 3 of those. We have Infinitrack Goliath in here at 3 because we need this to cycle through all of them to send them back with Tunneller usually, and then draw 2. 2 double-headed Anger Knuckles in here. I know 1 should be fairly enough, but sometimes I needed 2 and I felt like this was a bit better, but you can cut one of them and run good stuff instead, like Access, Code Talker and whatnots, and 1 Ancient Gear Ballista. This card very, very important for this deck. Let's go into the rating section. Let's make this quick. We talk about the power level, the strength of this specific deck list, and I would say it's a very low 3 out of 5. It can put up a very, very good go first board, but it is very vulnerable to maxi, to some disruption if you can't get your combo off. You do run some trap cards to make up for this, but you can't quite circumvent this all the time, but it has fairly different diverse play style. It has different opportunities, different possibilities, but the problem is it also doesn't deal too well with, well, other grindy decks, other back row decks. Not that much that can be doing about it because you can already see there are not that many cards that deal with your opponent's back row, so there's also that. So very low 3 out of 5 I would say, but for the price that's not too bad. Let's talk about consistency, and this is where I would say it is usually like a solid 4 out of 5 because you have lots of different consistency cards that get your Infinitrack play started. It's nearly like a 5 out of 5 because you do have a starting hand like 9 out of 10 times or 8 out of 10 times where you can go into your full combo. The problem with it is most of these hands do have an issue with one hand trap here and there, so yeah, I think consistency wise I would say like a low 4 out of 5 because you can get your play started quite a bit, and even if you don't get your full combo out, if you have certain trap cards, you can still keep your opponent's board at bay without going through the whole cycle of everything. So yeah, I would say low 4 out of 5, high 3 out of 5, depending on how you want to see it. When we talk about budget value, I will give this a high 4 out of 5 because this deck is very cheap, not so much on the ultra rare front because we have, I think, 6 ultra rares, but only 6 super rares, so fairly achievable. And also this deck contains cards of 3 different archetypes, and also Infinitrack you can splash into any other kind of deck. So if you want to at one point play Machina, then you can do this with, well, some of the cards that are in here you still need to craft quite a lot, but it does some stuff. Then if you want to play any other Earth Machine kind of variant, Infinitracks usually come in somewhat handy. You have the Therion King Regulus already, very neat card. You have certain cards for Ancient Gears as well. You don't need all that much more. You have the main cards that you use. And if you want to check out my, well, not pure Ancient Gear profile, but the Ancient Gear profile that focuses more on the Ancient Gear playstyle, but splashed in with some Infinitracks, that's also on my channel. So in the end, I would say like a, well, mediocre high 4 out of 5 should be absolutely fair here. Let's go to the replays. And of course we are going first. You can already see a very strong hand. We have 3 disruptive traps, and we have, well, the bait for the opponent, and we have the play starter as well with Brutal Dozer, even if the opponent does something about the Harvester later on or at the start. So we will see how this turns out. Obviously we want to start with Harvester here because, well, what else can we do? And there it is. Infinite impermanence, nothing we can be doing about this. What comes next? Obviously Brutal Dozer, because we don't have any other playable cards in our hand. We can just set them, and hopefully this card goes through. Even if it, well, if it does, then we are still pretty good on the combo. We don't have an extender in hand, but that usually doesn't matter too much because we should be fine anyway to get into something, but we cannot because that's the second infinite impermanence. And we have now at this stage 1 negate for a special summon monster, 1, well, kind of board wipe most likely, and another potential board wipe on your opponent's side of the field. So should be still okay. And then for the next turn, we might be able to draw into something with the Overdrive that we have in the graveyard. Then we might be able to draw into something good that starts our combo again. That's still in our deck because we have lots of different play starters. So we shall see with that one. What is our opponent playing? They are playing 10 Yi Sword. So who would have thought? A very competent deck that only needs a few cards to actually do stuff. And I thought, let's not get them into let them get into Baron, because obviously that would be very unfortunate. Although we would have enough to deal with it because we can always chain Lost Wind to the effect and so on, but then we'd have to burn quite a lot of stuff just on that one. So I thought maybe if they only have 2 more cards in hand, there's not that much they can do, and if I don't let them get into one of the tokens so they can activate the effect of the 10 cards, then potentially their turn is over if they didn't also draw into one of the level 4s. We shall see how that works out. They have Maxi as well, so 2 infinite impermanence, and gladly they only drew Maxi now, unless they already had it before but didn't really get to use it because obviously I didn't special summon. Could be, who knows. We shall see. They could have played this a tiny bit better if they already had Maxi then, because they could have waited for me to go into the River Stormer, I think it is, and then used the infinite impermanence, and then technically I would have drawn a lot in the meantime, and I would have ended on kind of the same board, but it is what it is. I don't know if you have to know Infinitrack quite well to be able to make that kind of judgment. So now we have Citadel on board. We can get rid of the board now, and I think for myself I thought they have 2 cards in hand now. What can they be doing with this? Is there stuff that would be that devastating? And they drew into the Heavenly Dragon Circle potentially, and now they can add to their hand cards that will be annoying because they can add a level 4. They haven't normal summoned yet. They don't even go for this because they don't want to special summon it. They just want to add it to their hand. Potentially should have special summoned it here actually, because if I get rid of this now, then they don't have anything else. I don't know what would have made more sense, because this card counts as special summon as well, so there's that. But I think the effects are negated, aren't they? I think it negates the effects if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, negates effects, so yeah, obviously you want to add it to your hand. So yeah, let's not let them get through with this. I saw, another normal summon, so I should be fine if I fire the Torrential Tribute here, because there's nothing they can do. I could have waited for them to go into the Synchro Monster, but again, they have a token here. I don't want them to use the effect of the 10 cards, so I thought let's just get rid of that now, and they surrendered here because, well, I don't know, they have probably as good of a resource game over the next turns than I do. It is what it is. They didn't want to sit through that one after using 3 hand traps on me. Fair enough. This time, another go first hand, who would have thought, and we have Overdrive in hand. We have a fairly similar hand than the last time. We have no access to the Infinitrack combo though, but it doesn't really matter. This replay can showcase how good Overdrive is and also how grindy this deck can be and how you can, well, go into your crazy combos instantly the next turn as well. Plus it showcases some very interesting other plays that I wanted to talk about with you anyway. So let's see where this is going. Obviously normal summon it to show dominance and inflict 600 points of damage and make them wonder, wait, Ancient Gears, non-fusion with 3 set cards, this can't be anything good, can it be? Well, we shall find out soon. They play the Blackwing deck, and not just the structure deck, they have obviously sprinkled in good cards. Ooh, dangerous, so we have to watch out with that one. They go into a certain place, and I thought no better time but the present to go into the Citadel, so we have that ready whenever they decide to go into something crazy that we need to stop here, and there's plenty of stuff that we can stop. They go for all of them together. I would have, in my opinion, would have gone for like these 2 and waited with this card in hand, because if you read this for a second, then you know potentially we're not going to get to this, but maybe they thought, oh, potentially we have a chance to go into level 10 here, and then this one doesn't matter anymore. So could have worked out, but I know my Blackwings, and I'm not going to let them get into the level 10, and also I'm not going to let them use the effect of Vata. So this ends right now, and it did actually end. I didn't even need my Torrential Tribute this time, or the Lost Wind. Luckily, draw into Metalcruncher, but we have so many different play starters. We have Metalcrunchers, we have the Infinitrack cards that searches, we have the Infinitrack card that searches. So there is all of that. So we should have been fine regardless. We technically potentially have the draw of the Overdrive and Graveyard, but right now we do not, of course. Then Metalcruncher searches us some stuff. Even if it didn't go off, we would still have been somewhat fine, but obviously it's better that we can now do the whole Infinitrack combo. And this one is an important one because this one is the one where you don't have an extender in hand just yet, so have to go through some hoops and do some things differently. But keep in mind, we have to sometimes count summons because Riverstormer can search the Therion King Regulus, and Therion King Regulus is a very, very, very interesting card because it obviously can stop Nibiru, and that can be important. So searching that, instantly summoning it, so we don't lose out too much. And from this point onwards, we can extend our resource plays because we have plenty of ways of getting multiple Goliaths into the graveyard, and with Trencher we can now summon this. And the reason for why I decided to not go into another Goliath that we can shuffle back, we want that one Goliath still in our extra deck because we only have one left, and with the last one we want to get Tunneller to the graveyard, so keep that one in mind if you search Tunneller through this kind of effect. And at this later stage where you don't have an extender on board that you can link off, and we don't want to be linking this one off, then you have to leave one Goliath in to send the Tunneller to the graveyard. So there is that one. We go into Ballista. Ballista searches us our what? Of course, Gearbox. Gearbox now searches Tunneller, the card I've been talking about for minutes now, and then we can summon that one and go from there. If your opponent had a monster on here, this is your way for you to go into the Ancient Gear package, because instead of searching Gearbox, then you could have searched the field spell, made your opponent's monster attack 0 and pop your Geartown, and then summoned Wyvern off of it. With Wyvern, you could have searched the fusion spell, or technically you could have summoned a Gearframe if you wanted to discard something, that's possible. And then you could have at least gone into Howitzer. If you had another Ancient Gear monster in your hand, you could have also done the other thing. So I thought potentially maybe we'll be drawing into another Ancient Gear card, and the fusion with the Tunneller effect obviously isn't going to happen, but yeah, theoretically that was always within the realm of possibilities here. Since the opponent didn't have a monster on board, didn't make sense to search the Geartown anyway. We now attribute this one, and now there's the Goliath to link off, and with that we can use the effect of Tunneller to shuffle most of our extra deck cards back, and one Hounding Hound, because the Hound makes a lot more sense in the deck. You could obviously have gotten back the Brutal Dozer as well if you wanted to, then that would have also made some sense. I drew into the Express Bullet Train, so we have an extender now that we can go into the full combo, I want to call it, but even if we didn't, we still had Overdrive and could have popped this card during opponent's turn, then got Citadel back, and so on and so on and so on. So there's still plenty to do, even if we just end on the Goliath here, and we now have a play for the next turn as well. And with the Express Bullet Train, we could potentially add something back to our hand, like the Brutal Dozer, but since we have Harvester, it doesn't really matter too much. What is important though is that you go into the Anger Knuckle, because Anger Knuckle can theoretically get you your Express Bullet Train back during your opponent's turn. Usually you don't want to do it during the same turn, because then you cannot get a card back, because obviously this card isn't in your graveyard during the end phase, but here it didn't really matter because I didn't have anything anyway, and I wanted to pop this card then with Overdrive, so I still have Anger Knuckle and could still technically summon it back again if I needed another blocker or anything like that. So I thought that made a little bit more sense, or you could have done it either way. Now use the effect of Overdrive to get the banished cards back and recycle some stuff, draw out another card. We have another Ancient Gearbox, so there's that. Potentially I could have done that a bit earlier and potentially ended up on some Ancient Gear play, but I don't think that makes much sense when the opponent doesn't have any monsters. But you can see how you could utilize the Ancient Gears in here if you wanted to. Going for some damage and then ending the turn. They now have the Nibiru, could have used it beforehand, but maybe they were scared that I can get the Therion back on board again if they use it during my turn, and since they knew I couldn't finish them, maybe that makes a bit more sense, so I'll cut them some slack for activating it after my battle phase. It is what it is. Now it's their turn, and we are pretty set, I'd say. There's not all that much they can be doing. Yes, they have Simoon, so very important for them, but we can get one more play starter for the next turn, and also we can get Citadel back, so it doesn't really matter too much. We still have some trap cards on board that do certain stuff, and they don't have all that much that they can be doing. I thought, oh, with a level 6 and level 4, might not want them to go any further. For some reason, they summon this card from hand, and then they concede. I don't know why it didn't prompt me to be able to pop the 2 cards. I would have done it anyway, but I still had Torrential Tribute and the trap card as well, so it wouldn't have made much of a difference. So you can see what the deck is supposed to be doing, what the deck does. Sometimes you will have weaker boards, sometimes you will have stronger boards, and sometimes, I promise, you will be going into the Ancient Gears. I had quite a lot of games where I did do it, mainly Howitzer, but even the Megaton isn't too hard to go into and can be very interesting. Hope you enjoyed the deck profile. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, I hope you have a nice day.